All right, welcome to the lecture on introductions, conclusions, and transitions. Since you have taken the time to write out your main points and you've done the research and you're pulling all that together, you are really close to done. So in order to polish off these outlines, you will need to write an introduction, a conclusion, and then in between every main point, you will be adding in a standalone transition. And if you see the model that I handed out at the beginning of class, and that's in our class online, you'll see the similarity with what we're teaching here to the example outline. So if you're following those outlines along with these presentations, you'll be okay. So starting out with introductions. First of all, what's the purpose of an introduction?
Help set the mood of the speech.
Okay, so we set the mood of the speech because we know that the audience needs to have an idea of what our relationship is with them. They need to know if this is persuasive, this is informative, or entertaining, or whatever general purpose you have. So that's exactly right. That's one of the things. Is that the only thing?
Just to grab the attention. To introduce.
Okay, so we actually want to get their attention. Okay, and we'll talk about the attention getter in just a moment. Are there any other reasons why we need an introduction?
To introduce the topic.
Okay, good. Good. So we're introducing the topic. Anything else?
Establish credibility.
Good. Good.
And state your central ideas.
Okay, all right. So we actually have almost all the things needed in an introduction. So this is the order. This is a very time-tested way to develop an introduction. It has a very specific order, and you should be following this order as you develop a presentation. And there are a couple of things that can change in here depending on your attention getter and your credibility. So these two may merge, or they may be placed in a different area in the introduction, but the flow of an introduction will go in this area, in this order. So the very first thing that you have to do is get the attention of your audience, and that's what Eli just said right here. Get their attention. And this is vital when you're starting out. So and we can consider our books, we can consider other references in this, but how long do you think it takes for an audience to decide whether they're going to pay attention to your presentation? They're interested enough in it.
Not very long.
Okay, so how long does it take for you before you decide you're not interested in something, or you are interested?
About 10, 15 seconds.
Okay, 10 or 15 seconds. That's what a lot of my students say. Okay, you're shaking your head? That one? Yeah. Okay, so how about the rest of you? And this is typical for adults.
It's kind of like reading or judging a book by its cover. We don't need to do it, but we do it. So like it's even just how they're standing beforehand or how their voices when they first start talking.
Excellent point. So it is. We are reading a book by its cover. I'm not saying that this is fair, that this is right, that it shouldn't be, that this is the way things should be, but this is how things are when you are presenting. You have to have an attractive attention getter in all kinds of things, in the way how you present yourself, but also in the material that you're using. Otherwise, your audience will not listen to you at all. They have to be highly intrinsically motivated in order to listen to the rest of your presentation if this is not very good. So you need to have a good attention getter. So now that we know that we have to have an excellent attention getter, what are some ideas? What can we do in order to get the attention of our audience?
Good at comedy.
Okay, humor is an excellent way to bring out an audience and to get their attention. And of course, if you just follow a few simple rules, it's fine. So you have to make sure that it's inclusive and that everybody in your audience will appreciate it. If you use any kind of humor that excludes your audience, then that's defeating the purpose. If you embarrass your audience, that's defeating the purpose. They're probably going to have a hard time being focused on what you're saying if they're concerned about themselves and how they look in front of an audience. So you want to make sure that you use tasteful humor, especially in this type of a public speaking setting. So humor is a good way, plus it relaxes them and it relaxes you as a speaker. Okay, so humor's great. What else can we do?
Use facts, like an interesting fact.
Okay. Have you run across anything within learning about the language you're studying that has been interesting that you could use as an attention getter?
I don't know, I actually ended up changing it, so.
Oh, okay. Well, and that's with a startling statistic is something that you can do that isn't commonly known, or you can present it in a way that maybe people haven't considered this. Which country in the world has more cell phones per capita than the United States? What's that do for you when I ask that question? You are engaged now in the topic, you're thinking about it. I haven't quite told you what it is yet, but now you're interested. You know, what kind of a country would have that? One of my students asked that question, and it wasn't what I thought, but it was within the theme of her presentation. She was talking about communication technology within another country. Other ideas? Let's tell a story. Quick story. You don't have a lot of time with this presentation, but a quick story. Yeah, don't tell a 5-minute story and you're a attention getter for this presentation. It may work for another one, but you know, we enjoy stories, and that's something that you can engage in, especially if you have experience in this topic like you do. You know, you can tell a story, you can talk about an experience maybe with your grandparent about this culture that is unique, that's different. Am I forgetting anything with attention getters? Anything listed in your book?
A quote, maybe?
A quote. Okay, and that one I kind of intentionally skip over because I don't want you to use too many quotes in this class. But a quote is good. If it's less than 20 words and you don't quote anywhere else in this assignment, then you're good. But a quote does work. The only time you should use a quote is if you absolutely cannot paraphrase and if you lose a lot of the meaning when you paraphrase. So, but that is an idea to use in attention getters, and yeah, I kind of skipped over that because of the purpose of the assignment, but for overall use in developing an introduction, quotes work very well. So how many of you have a couple of ideas right now as far as what you can do for an attention getter? Did you write it down? Because I don't want you to forget, because we're going to come back and we're going to develop these. The next thing, what we were talking about, what Liam had said before, is you want to establish that relationship with your audience. You state your specific purpose as you have written it. So today I'm going to inform you about the history of Italian foods. Okay, that's it. You just throw it out there. And now they know, oh, okay, this is an informative presentation. I know exactly what it's about. Next thing, the relevance to your audience. This, in other textbooks, is sometimes called goodwill for your audience. Why is this good for them? So again, as adult learners are incredibly impatient. Children are much more patient when it comes to giving speakers or presenters or teachers chances. But adults, you have our attention. I know what this is about. This is when they start fading on you. Okay, so, well, you know, that's all interesting, but, you know, what's it matter to me? And we all do this, so we have to state why this is important for your audience. Why should I care about the history of Italian food? I just order a pizza and I'm good. Okay, so what is it about the history of Italian food that's good for your audience? You have to be able to answer that question. So why do you think we should know about the history of Italian food?
Just get more information about it. You know, what you exactly eating.
Is it good to know about the different ethnic foods that we eat? Do you find relevance in that? Okay, seeing a lot of head nods. It's good to know. We're something that is not just a pizza you get from Pizza Hut or Domino's. You know, there's more to it. There's more history behind it. Maybe we should know about it. Okay, now that we have established that this is important to you, next thing is what makes you so smart. This is your credibility. So, okay, you got my attention. I know what we're talking about. I know this is important to me, but why should I listen to you? You realize, adult learners, we're a tough audience. So you have to let them know that, you know, gosh, I didn't just pick up this information off the street, unless it's street information you're trying to teach. You know, if I were to say here, you know, I'm going to teach you this entire class on communication, and I spent all day Googling my sources. Are you going to want to listen to me? No. No. So what do we do in order to establish our credibility with our audience?
Name drop.
Name drop, okay? What are we going to name drop in this short area here? And you're right, name drops are going to win.
EBSCO hosts, like authors related stuff.
Okay, so I spent the last 3 weeks scouring over scholarly journals and EBSCO host and Gale resources, and I spent time in the library, and I chose the best information I could find to present to you right here. So you are showing us that you know way more than what you're presenting, and you're just picking out the best things for us. That's one way, and that's a really good way to demonstrate your credibility. Now, I kind of mentioned this in the attention getter. How many of you have experience in this culture? I know you do. You mentioned that. Anybody else have experience within the culture that they're...
My grandpa's gone to Oktoberfest, and my brother and dad and uncle did too.
Okay, so you may have had a story or an experience that you brought up here, and if you did that, that's actually demonstrating your credibility. So if you fall into that category, you can eliminate this point right here. So you can merge these two together if it's within your attention getter. I don't want you to force it if it's not there, but that is something that can happen. So you started talking about your experiences in Vietnam. There we go. We've got your credibility right here. Then the very last thing we do before we go into the main points, first thing I'm going to talk about is this. And the second thing I'm going to talk about, maybe the third thing I'm going to talk about is this. You let your audience know exactly what you're going to talk about. Now, if you've developed your thesis statement in logical divisions, you can just tweak that and throw that in a sentence, and you're good to go. If not, you just look at your main points. You say, first thing, second thing, and for some of you, maybe the third thing I'm going to talk about is this. Now you're ready to move on. That's the perfect formula for an introduction. You can see that in your example outlines as well. Does that make sense to everyone? Are there any questions about the introduction? You write your main points, you have them all down. The last thing you need to do is you need to wrap this up with a conclusion. Let them know what you just talked about. I know it sounds redundant, but this is good for public speaking. everything goes to past tense. Where this says, I'm going to inform you about this, this says, I just informed you about this thing. And when we come back here, a couple things, you need to remind the audience why this is important to them. Why you didn't just waste their time. Okay, so next time you are drinking a beer during a German event, maybe you should consider the history behind it. Okay, that's why it's important. If we're going to be partaking in festivities, we should probably know what they're about. And if it's persuasion, you're going to call to action. That's when you ask them to do it. And we'll talk more about that when we get into the actual persuasive arguments. So we're not focusing on that right now. Okay, so the conclusion should be just a little bit shorter than your introduction. For the size of your papers, your outlines, your introduction is probably going to be about a half a page. Your conclusion is going to be about a third of a page.